Partner, and welcome to the Selling Power TV. Today we have the great pleasure of meeting with Spencer Wixom. He is the CEO of the Brooks Group, and I just realized I have some audio issues. Can you say hello to the audience?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Hi, Gerhard. Thanks for having me on.
So you wanted to talk about the new research that you did, how high performance sales teams win. And you've done it co-created with Selling Power, and I'd love to hear the highlights of that research because you're going to do a more formal presentation at our Sales 3.0 conference on March 20th and 21st.
That's right. Super excited to be there. And we are going to be outlining some of the research that we have been doing across the last number of months, culminating in a research study we just published. So, Gerhard, I don't want to give too many of the punchlines away. That'll be saved for the presentation on the 20th. But I will say, let me give you a little bit of background as to what we were interested in studying. So, number one, we were noticing that it was a very uncertain economic environment that sellers were operating in. For some, it was the best of times. For some, it was the worst of times. And given an environment like that of pretty significant change and uncertainty, we wanted to understand what was making the difference between the high-performing organizations and those organizations that weren't hitting their targets, and how much these changes that we've been seeing in buying behavior and how much these changes we've been seeing in selling behavior are making a difference or contributing to either performance or lack of performance.
That's awesome. So what the first thing that comes to mind when I hear about your research is to what degree are sales leaders responsible for the performance of their salespeople?
It's a very good question. And this was actually a study. Let me give you a little bit more detail into the study. It was a study of 155 senior sales leaders in organizations 50 million and above, across well over a dozen different industries. So we really tried to get a broad swath of different samples, and we went very deep with them, exploring the organization. And that idea of coaching, leadership, people development, that was the critical focus. And what we found, just to give you a bit of a preview, is that there are a couple of elements that may be surprising to some, may not be as surprising to others, that really do have a strong correlation to high performance and are really important right now. Let me just kind of preview a few of those elements. Number one that we're all very familiar with is that very active, frontline, careful coaching that's being done with salespeople, investing time and effort in really supporting very actively their skill development and their process adherence. And again, I'll talk more about that when we have more time on the 20th. Also, it's being very deliberate and careful in the way you structure their onboarding. What we're finding is organizations for the longest time, when they were scaling very quickly and they were bringing on a lot of salespeople, weren't paying a lot of attention to carefully developing the capability of each of those salespeople to sell the solution they have to offer. So they might have pushed very hard at giving them a lot of understanding of the product, the technical features and benefits, and put them out in the field, hoping that their past experience in the market and with customers would win the day. But we're finding the organizations that are performing a lot better are all the way up through the leadership ranks, are very actively involved from day one in structured onboarding and development of salespeople. And that's in three areas, right? That's in understanding the market and the customer that you're selling into. That's understanding your product or your solution that you're taking to the market. But third, it's understanding the process, the skills, and the expectations of performance that you have in your selling motion. And the organizations that are from day one setting up and structuring that type of onboarding are performing a lot better.
That's fascinating. So what you're saying is that you need that structure from the get-go. So the next question is, how does the Brooks Group help sales organizations define and implement that structure and that process so that salespeople can perform at higher levels?
Well, it's a great question. We're very interested right now in process adherence because we see that as one of the big differentiators in performance. And that's our data played that out. Again, I'm not going to give away the punchline. I'll share a lot more of the specifics on that data in the presentation on the 20th. But here's what I will tell you. Number one, defining that process is very important. And defining that process in such a way that it's, number one, intuitive, easy for sellers to understand, follow, communicate around. It has a very sort of simple and clear language associated with it. And number two is measuring people's understanding and capability to follow it and execute it. I mean, what is sales process but a series of decisions, judgment calls that salespeople need to make throughout a process? The question I think every organization should be asking is, how good is our sellers' intuition? How good is their acumen in making the right decisions to take the right actions at each of those steps? And what we offer at the Brooks Group are, number one, the articulation and the definition of that process. But number two, the assessment of each and every seller to really see how good are they at making the right decision. And what we found in our research over time, I'll talk a little bit more about this, is sellers really get it right on the average across industries and populations about 50% of the time. Now, the organizations that can develop their people such that they're beating that average, beating it by 10, 20, 30 points, are going to see a lot better performance.
That's awesome. Are there certain industry categories that are doing better than others?
If you're talking about process adherence, certain categories that are doing better than others, I think it's those categories that have been focused over time on the need for process adherence. So the ones that weren't growing at a super quick clip or just needing to push a bunch of salespeople into the field very quickly. A lot of your kind of legacy, more traditional industries, we're seeing perform better in that regard. I wouldn't say there's any particular industry. It more just differs by the company, right? How important has consistent process adherence been to the culture of that company?
Let's focus a little bit on coaching. You mentioned earlier that coaching is imperative. What are the best practices that you can share around sales coaching? How do you know that you're doing it right?
Yeah, well, I think you know you're doing it right by the the effect that it's having across the team, right? I think one of the best coaching metrics out there is percentage of team members hitting or exceeding plan, not just the average team performance against plan, I should say the aggregate team performance against plan. So how many people on your team in your span of control are you able to have performing at or above target? That shows real team health in coaching. I would say number two is your dedication in time and type of activity to coaching, which is something that very progressive organizations measure, but I don't think organizations broadly measure or monitor the exact activity that coaches are doing. But Gerhard, let me share a new idea with you. And at least it's new to our research, but it's not an idea that's new to some organizations. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's the idea of managers shepherding or including the peers among the team in that coaching and that development. It's giving a development job for every member of the team to do. Because what's interesting, what we're finding is there's a lot of sellers who have been conditioned to sort of show up and receive, to be trained, to receive training, to receive instruction, to receive coaching. And there's differing levels of engagement, as you can imagine, with that type of thing. Some are really interested and willing to accept it. And some are very resistant or hesitant to that type of coaching or development. Now, what I've seen with some organizations that have really been succeeding recently is they've been very careful to assign responsibility or accountability to each of the team members of the team to support the coaching that's happening, to support the development that's happening, peer coaching, as you will, supporting one another. And when the manager, when the leader of that team is organizing and supporting that peer coaching, boy, we see a much stronger benefit.
So how would you describe the mindset of the sales leader in regards to coaching? What do people tell themselves? What do they need to focus on? Because there are really three things that I've seen sales leaders focus on. One is that they're relentlessly focused on the numbers. The second sales leader focuses relentlessly on the process. And the third may look at training, and they don't see the need to have a one-on-one debrief where they talk about the performance and not about the numbers and not about anything else but the salesperson.
Yeah, well, so what's interesting, so the mindsets definitely differ, I think, manager to manager, right? And a lot of that, I think, depends on the amount of stress or burden that manager is feeling and the urgency of activity that they're trying to drive. I will tell you, regardless, though, of the amount of burden or urgency to a particular manager, I think those who are performing the best are the ones who recognize what this is all about, which is the quality of the performance and the execution of the process, the quality execution of the process by their people drives stronger lifetime relationships with customers. And if you look at what organizations, sales organizations are prioritizing this year, and this is a part of our research, they're very different than what they were prioritizing a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, that priority at the organizational level would have been scale, growth, adding salespeople, hitting much greater, double-digit top-line revenue growth type of thing. When we asked what the priorities were for 2024, they were retaining existing valuable customers, margins and profitability, growing opportunities within existing accounts. And again, the quality of the skill set that sellers have in executing those engagements and those relationships with customers, the quality of their adherence to process to make sure there's real good quality in everything that they're doing in interacting with customers. That's what's going to make the difference to hit those organizational outcomes, in my opinion. And so the best managers are the ones who are focused on developing their people around that.
Got it. Well, I'm very excited, Spencer, that you are sharing the research, but also the recommendations on how to create a higher performance sales team. And I want to remind the audience, this session will be on doing our Sales Transformation Summit on March 20th and 21st. And Spencer, do you have a copy of the research that you will share after your session?
Absolutely, I do. I'm super excited to share that with everyone. I'm going to walk through the findings, share our perspective on them. We've been thinking quite a bit about what we've seen in the data. And then everybody will have a QR code to download the research report afterward. And of course, what we always love to do is stay in touch with people, connect with them, have deeper conversation around the findings, which we hope you'll find very fascinating.
Awesome. Thank you, Spencer.
Gerhard, it's great to be with you. Great to chat with you. I'm really looking forward to the 20th and the 21st.
Thank you so much.